done?
Yeah.
Michael does. Who else does? Anybody else?
No, I have to open my phone.
Okay. Well, your bone ringer today is about symbolism. Tell me what symbolism means.
All right.
Michael?
When you describe something or someone with symbols.
Okay.
Good job.
What does that mean, though?
When you use something else to signify.
Okay. Well, here's the basics. There's a lot in literature, in film, in all kinds of things. We often have symbolism that is where you have something, whether it's a character or an object or a setting, that might represent something else. Okay, like the flag is a symbol of liberty and freedom to us. Okay. So what we want to be thinking about, and we're actually going to go back today into some of the earlier chapters and identify some themes and some symbolism in the novel after we finish reading chapter 8. Okay. But we do want to look at the symbolism and the themes that we have in Lord of the Flies, because there are. Can you think of any objects that might be symbols you can think of off the bat right now in this novel? I need to get my what?
I was thinking of something that he said in this novel.
Oh, well, give me a different example.
When someone gets married, their ring symbolizes that someone's together with someone.
Yes, that's a perfect example. That's an excellent example. A ring is a symbol of unity, of marriage, letting them know that I'm committed to someone. It's a symbol of commitment. Yeah, that's a great example. So can anybody think of any objects? You don't have to identify what the symbolism is yet, but can you think of any objects that might be symbols in the novel?
The conch.
Yes, very good. Now I'm going to ask you, what do you think the conch might represent or symbolize? Leadership? Okay.
And
Michael?
Oh, I was gonna do that.
Okay. Go ahead, Kaylee. And what else might it be besides leadership?
I don't know. It kind of symbolizes just like power and
Okay. It's a symbol of power, leadership. Yes?
What they consider the beast that symbolizes like what's his name? The guy like that comes and haunts you in your dreams, or like we were told as little kids.
Oh, the Grim Reaper?
Yeah, like
Okay. Something like that. Yes. It also, the beast could be a symbol of their fears too. He's like a manifestation of their fears. Okay. Hello, Andrew's here too. Okay. So guys, we were talking about symbolism in the novel. We are going to go back after we finish reading chapter 8. We're going to do a little bit an exercise with symbolism and themes in some of the earlier chapters. And then no quiz today. Okay. We're going to take a break from quizzes today. All right, so let me pull up chapter 8. No, it doesn't work that way. Sorry, guys. I was looking for an easier way to get to. Let me see if I can copy.
if these chicken nuggets are soggy, I'm gonna be so mad.
It's chicken nugget day. I pack my lunch. That's what I do anymore. I have for a couple of years now.
what I usually do, but I stopped doing it.
Yeah.
I usually around this time of year I usually go on a huge diet.
Yeah. Are you in wrestling?
Well, I used to be,
Okay.
but no. around this time of year. Pretty much me and my uncle, we start working out really hard. He does professional arm wrestling, so.
Oh, cool.
Actually, we'd probably be in Florida right now if he was still doing it and it wasn't closed.
Yeah. I typically have wrestlers about this time who are trying to make weight.
My cousin's baby, he was like real small for a while
Yeah,
until this past year he's been like worrying a lot about what he's eating and stuff.
because he's gotten bigger.
Yeah, he's gotten a lot stronger, more muscular, and like
Oh, so he's gonna have to go up a weight class probably.
yeah, now he's like starting to have to gain weight because he's a football player
Okay.
and his like BMI was not where it was.
Okay.
He
That
had
happened
more-
with a lot of people during the pandemic.
He had more muscle than he did like body fat.
Okay.
Which is better.
Oh,
But, like
okay.
the amount of muscle he had, he should have had more body fat than he did.
Okay. Guys, had we gotten to the part, had I read so far here? I think Simon had passed through the area of fruit trees, but today the little ones had been too busy. I think I read that part to you guys yesterday.
You read to the part where they left, or no, they didn't left. They didn't,
They're like,
where they figured out that some of the boys left with Jack.
and Jack
Oh,
was
okay.
conspiring with them,
Yeah.
something like that.
Okay. All right. So I see it here. He came to himself with a jolt. Piggy and the other two were by him. They were laden with fruit.
Somewhere around
I thought perhaps, said Piggy, we ought to have a feast, kind of. The three boys sat down. They had a great mass of the fruit with them, and all of it properly ripe. They grinned at Ralph as he took some and began to eat. Thanks, he said. Then with an accent of pleased surprise, thanks. Do all right on our own, said Piggy. It's them that haven't no common sense that make trouble on this island. We'll make a little hot fire. Ralph remembered what had been worrying him. Where's Simon? I don't know. You don't think he's climbing the mountain? Piggy broke into mostly noisy laughter and took more fruit. He might be. He gulped his mouth full. He's cracked. Okay, that's where I think I may have left off with you guys. So now we're going to go to Simon. Simon had passed through the area of fruit trees, but today the little ones had been too busy with the fire on the beach and they had not pursued him there. He went on among the creepers until he reached the great mat that was woven by the open space and crawled inside. Beyond the screen of leaves, the sunlight pelted down and the butterflies danced in the middle of their unending dance. He knelt down and the arrow of the sun fell on him. That other time, the air had seemed to vibrate with heat, but now it threatened. Soon the sweat was running from his long, coarse hair. He shifted restlessly, but there was no avoiding the sun. Presently he was thirsty, and then very thirsty. He continued to sit. So Simon is off by himself again in his little space. And why he's not coming out, even though he's really thirsty, I don't know. I think it's because he feels secure there.
Which the only safe place we have.
Yes. Now we're going to go to Jack and the hunters. Far off along the beach, Jack was standing before a small group of boys. He was looking brilliantly happy. Hunting, he said. He sized them up. Each of them wore the remains of a black cap, and ages ago they had stood in two demure rows, and their voices had been the song of angels. So this is his choir, except for Simon. Simon had been a part of the choir too, if you remember at the beginning.
I do, because he was one of the hospital.
Yes, yes. We'll hunt. I'm going to be chief. They nodded, and the crisis passed easily. Because remember, these same boys who are now here with them had not voted Ralph out as chief. So I think they're a little, even though they followed Jack, I think they were still a little reluctant to follow Jack, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
But they did it anyway. Part of it may be because they saw Piggy taking control and they don't really like Piggy. Okay. They nodded and the crisis passed easily. And then, about the beast. They moved, looked at the forest. I say this, we aren't going to bother about the beast. He nodded at them. We're going to forget the beast. That's right. Yes, forget the beast. Okay, so they're like, yeah, we're just going to not even bother with it. Just going to forget it's there. If Jack was astonished by their fervor, he did not show it. And another thing, we shan't dream so much down here. This is near the end of the island. Okay, so what's he saying? It is where we, okay. I was thinking it was familiar. So he's saying, hey, we're not going to have nightmares down here either. You can't really control that, but they agreed passionately out of the depths of their tormented private lives. Their tormented private lives. These are boys, but they have tormented private lives because of their life on the island. And their private lives are those fears that they don't really share with one another. Okay. Now listen, we might go later to the Castle Rock, but now I'm going to get more of the biggins away from the conch and all that. We'll kill a pig and give a feast. He paused and went on more slowly. And about the beast, when we kill, we'll leave some of the kill for it. Then it won't bother us, maybe. He stood up abruptly. We'll go into the forest now and hunt. So they're saying, hey, we're going to leave something for the beast. He turned and trotted away, and after a moment, they followed him obediently. They spread out nervously in the forest. Almost at once, Jack found the dung and scattered roots that told of pig, and soon the track was fresh. Jack signaled the rest of the hunt to be quiet and went forward by himself. He was happy and wore the damp darkness of the forest like his old clothes. He crept down a slope to rocks and scattered trees by the sea. The pigs lay, bloated bags of fat, sensuously enjoying the shadows under the trees. There was no wind, and they were unsuspicious, and practice had made Jack silent as the shadows. He stole away again and instructed his hidden hunters. Presently, they all began to inch forward, sweating in the silence and heat. Under the trees, an ear flapped idly. A little apart from the rest, sunk in deep maternal bliss, lay the largest sow of the lot. She was black and pink, and the great bladder of her belly was fringed with a row of piglets that slept or burrowed and squeaked. 15 yards from the drove, Jack stopped, and his arm, straightening, pointed at the sow. He looked round in inquiry to make sure that everyone understood, and the other boys nodded at him. The row of right arms slid back. Now! The drove of pigs started up, and at a range of only 10 yards, the wooden spears with fire-hardened points flew toward the chosen pig. One piglet, with a demented shriek, rushed into the sea, trailing Roger's spear behind it. The sow gave a gasping squeal and staggered up, with two spears sticking in her fat flank. The boys shouted and rushed forward. The piglets scattered, and the sow burst the advancing line and went crashing away through the forest. After her! They raced along the pig track, but the forest was too dark and tangled so that Jack, cursing, stopped them and cast among the trees. Then he said nothing for a time, but breathed fiercely so that they were awed by him and looked at each other in uneasy admiration. Presently, he stabbed down at the ground with his finger. There! Before the others could examine the drop of blood, Jack had swerved off, judging a trace, touching a bough that gave. So he followed, mysteriously right and assured, and the hunters trod behind him. He stopped before a covert. In there. They surrounded the covert, but the sow got away with the sting of another spear in her flank. The trailing butts hindered her, and the sharp cross-cut points were a torment. She blundered into a tree, forcing a spear still deeper, and after that, any of the hunters could follow her easily by the drops of vivid blood. The afternoon wore on, hazy and dreadful with damp heat. The sow staggered her way ahead of them, bleeding and mad, and the hunters followed, wedded to her in lust, excited by the long chase and that dropped blood. They could see her now, nearly got up with her, but she spurted with her last strength and held ahead of them again. They were just behind her when she staggered into an open space where bright flowers grew and butterflies danced round each other, and the air was hot and still. Here, struck down by the heat, the sow fell, and the hunters hurled themselves at her. This dreadful eruption from an unknown world made her frantic. She squealed and bucked, and the air was full of sweat and noise and blood and terror. Roger ran round the heap, prodding with his spear whenever pig flesh appeared. Jack was on top of the sow, stabbing downward with his knife. Roger found a lodgment for his point, began to push till he was leaning with his whole weight. The spear moved forward inch by inch, and the terrified squealing became a high-pitched scream. Then Jack found the throat, and the hot blood spouted over his hands. The sow collapsed under them, and they were heavy and fulfilled upon her. The butterfly still danced, preoccupied in the center of the clearing. At last, the immediacy of the kill subsided. The boys drew back, and Jack stood up, holding out his hands. Look, he giggled and flicked them while the boys laughed at his reeking palms. Then Jack grabbed Maurice and rubbed the stuff over his cheeks. Roger began to withdraw his spear, and boys noticed it for the first time. Robert stabilized the thing in a phrase which was received uproariously. Right up her ass. Did you hear? Did you hear what he said? Right up her arse. I'm going to say arse like the British, okay? This time, Robert and Maurice acted the two parts, and Maurice's acting of the pig's efforts to avoid the advancing spear was so funny that the boys cried with laughter. At length, even this palled, Jack began to clean his bloody hands on the rock. Then he started work on the sow and paunched her, lugging out the hot bags of colored guts, pushing them into a pile on the rock while the others watched him. He talked as he worked. We'll take the meat along the beach. I'll go back to the platform and invite them to a feast. That should give us time. Roger spoke. Chief, how can we make a fire? Jack squatted back and frowned at the pig. We'll raid them and take fire. There must be 4 of you, Henry and you, Robert and Maurice. We'll put on paint and sneak up. Roger can snatch a branch while I say what I want. The rest of you can get this back to where we were. We'll build the fire there. And after that, he paused and stood up, looking at the shadows under the trees. His voice was lower when he spoke again. But we'll leave part of the kill for... He knelt down again and was busy with his knife. The boys crowded around him. He spoke over his shoulder to Roger. Sharpen a stick at both ends. Presently, he stood up, holding the dripping sow's head in his hands. I mean, guys, this is just gross and gory. I don't know about you, but for me, it's pretty graphic. And then contrast that. The author does a really good job. You know, here's where they've murdered this sow, basically. They're slaughtering it. But the butterflies are still flying around undisturbed. I mean, what kind of a contrast does that show us? You've got these pretty little butterflies, and then you've got this slaughtered pig. And if they were thinking ahead, you probably shouldn't have slaughtered the sow, because who knows how long the piglets can survive on their own. We don't know if they're big enough to go without her milk. And then you might, long term, you may not have meat on the island. You really need to keep some of them going. So I don't know. That's just what I was thinking. And now he's holding the head of the sow. Let's see. Presently, he stood up holding the dripping sow's head in his hands. Where's that stick? Here. Ram one end in the earth. Oh, it's rock. Jam it in that crack. There. Jack held up the head and jammed the soft throat down on the pointed end of the stick, which pierced through into the mouth. He stood back and the head hung there, a little blood dribbling down the stick. Instinctively, the boys drew back too, and the forest was very still. They listened, and the loudest noise was the buzzing of flies over the spilled guts. Jack spoke in a whisper. Pick up the pig. Maurice and Robert skewered the carcass, lifted the dead weight, and stood ready. In the silence and standing over the dry blood, they looked suddenly furtive. Jack spoke loudly. "This head is for the beast. It's a gift." The silence accepted the gift and awed them. The head remained there, dim-eyed, grinning faintly, blood blackening between the teeth. All at once they were running away as fast as they could through the forest toward the open beach. Simon stayed where he was, a small brown image concealed by the leaves. Even if he shut his eyes, the sow's head still remained like an after image. So Simon watched all of this. The half-shut eyes were dim with the infinite cynicism of adult life. They assured Simon that everything was a bad business. "I know that." Simon discovered that he had spoken aloud. He opened his eyes quickly, and there was the head grinning amusedly in the strange daylight, ignoring the flies, the spilled guts, even ignoring the indignity of being spiked on a stick. Is Simon losing it? I think he is. He looked away, licking his dry lips. A gift for the beast. Might not the beast come for it? The head, he thought, appeared to agree with him. "Run away," said the head silently. "Go back to the others. It was a joke, really. Why should you bother? You were just wrong, that's all. A little headache, something you ate, perhaps. Go back, child," said the head silently. So he thinks the head is talking to him, or he seems to, have that feeling. Simon looked up, feeling the weight of his wet hair, and gazed at the sky. Up there, for once, were clouds, great bulging towers that sprouted away over the island, gray and cream and copper-colored. The clouds were sitting on the land. They squeezed, produced moment by moment this close, tormenting heat. Even the butterflies deserted the open space where the obscene thing grinned and dripped. Simon lowered his head, carefully keeping his eyes shut, then sheltered them with his hand. There were no shadows under the tree, but everywhere a pearly stillness, so that what was real seemed elusive and without definition. The pile of guts was a black blob of flies that buzzed like a saw. After a while, these flies found Simon. Gorged, they alighted by his runnels of sweat and drank. They tickled under his nostrils and played leapfrog on his thighs. Okay, this is just gross too. They were black and iridescent green and without number. And in front of Simon, the Lord of the Flies hung on his stick and grinned. At last, Simon gave up and looked back, saw the white teeth and dim eyes, the blood, and his gaze was held by that ancient, inescapable recognition. In Simon's right temple, a pulse began to beat on the brain. So, we get the title of our novel, The Lord of the Flies. And the Lord of the Flies is actually what? The head of the pig on the stick. That's what Simon is referring to. He's referring to that pig head on the stick, and he's calling it the Lord of the Flies. Okay? That's where the title comes from, because it's covered in flies, because it's this fresh, dead, rotting fly. Well, it's starting to rot. It will quickly in the sun, okay, and then dry out. But the flies, flies swarm around things like this. If you see roadkill, you'll see flies all over it. It's just what happens. Ralph and Piggy lay in the sand, gazing at the fire and idly flicking pebbles into its smokeless heart. That branch is gone. Where's Sam and Eric? We ought to get some more wood. We're out of green branches. Ralph sighed and stood up. There were no shadows under the palms on the platform, only this strange light that seemed to come from everywhere at once. High up among the bulging clouds, thunder went off like a gun. Okay, so the weather has changed. And you know how Simon was describing how the heat seemed worse and close. Right before a thunderstorm in the summer, often the heat gets or we might have really strong, heavy heat for a while, and it just feels like the air is thick with moisture. And then you have a thunderstorm roll in. That's what's happening here. We're building up to a storm. And they haven't had a storm apparently in months. It's been pretty pleasant, and they may have had a little bit of rain, but they didn't really talk about that. All right, we're going to get buckets of rain. What about the fire? Ralph trotted into the forest and returned with a wide spray of green, which he dumped on the fire. The branch crackled, the leaves curled, and the yellow smoke expanded. Piggy made an aimless little pattern in the sand with his fingers. Trouble is, we haven't got enough people for a fire. You got to treat Sam and Eric as one turn. They do everything together, of course. Well, that isn't fair. Don't you see? They ought to do 2 turns. Ralph considered this and understood. He was vexed to find how little he thought like a grown-up and sighed again. The island was getting worse and worse. Piggy looked at the fire. You'll want another green branch soon. Ralph rolled over. Piggy, what are we going to do? Just have to get on without him. But the fire. He frowned at the black and white mess in which lay the unburnt ends of branches. He tried to formulate. I'm scared. He saw Piggy look up and blundered on. Not of the beast. I mean, I'm scared of that too, but nobody else understands about the fire. If someone threw you a rope when you were drowning, if a doctor said, take this because if you don't take it, you'll die, you would, wouldn't you? I mean, of course I would. Can't they see? Can't they understand? Without the smoke signal, we'll die here. Look at that. A wave of heated air trembled above the ashes, but without a trace of smoke. We can't keep one fire going, and they don't care. And what's more, he looked intensely into Piggy's streaming face. What's more, I don't sometimes. Supposing I got like the others, not caring, what'll become of us? Piggy took off his glasses, deeply troubled. I don't know, Ralph. We just got to go on, that's all. That's what grown-ups would do. Ralph, having begun the business of unburdening himself, continued. Piggy, what's wrong? Piggy looked at him in astonishment. Do you mean that? No, not if, I mean, what makes things break up like they do? So he's not asking Piggy what's wrong right now at this moment. He's asking why do things fall apart like this? That's what he's asking. Piggy rubbed his glasses slowly and thought. When he understood how far Ralph had gone toward accepting him, he flushed pinkly with pride. I don't know, Ralph. I expect it's him. Jack? Jack. A taboo was evolving round that word, too. Ralph nodded solemnly. Yes, he said, I suppose it must be. The forest near them burst into uproar. Demonic figures with faces of white and red and green rushed out howling so that the little ones fled screaming. Out of the corner of his eye, Ralph saw Piggy running. 2 figures rushed at the fire and prepared to defend himself, but they grabbed half-burnt branches and raced away along the beach. The 3 others stood still, watching Ralph, and he saw that the tallest of them, stark naked save for paint and a belt, was Jack. So Jack has gone completely savage now. He's wearing a belt for his knife, and he's wearing a painted face. Otherwise, nothing. Well, Ralph had his breath back and spoke. Well, Jack ignored him, lifted his spear, and began to shout. Listen, all of you. Me and my hunters were living along the beach by a flat rock. We hunt and feast and have fun. If you want to join my tribe, come and see us. Perhaps I'll let you join. Perhaps not. He paused and looked round. He was safe from shame or self-consciousness behind the mask of his paint and could look at each of them in turn. Ralph was kneeling by the remains of the fire like a sprinter at his mark, and his face was half hidden by hair and smut. Sam and Eric peered through together around a palm tree at the edge of the forest, a little and howled, creased and crimson by the bathing pool, and Piggy stood on the platform, the white conch gripped at his hands. Tonight we're having a feast. We've killed a pig and we've got meat. You can come and eat with us if you like. Up in the cloud canyons, the thunder boomed again. Jack and the 2 anonymous savages with him swayed, looking up, and then recovered. The little one went on howling. Jack was waiting for something. He whispered urgently to the others. Go on, now. The two savages murmured. Jack spoke sharply. Go on. The two savages looked at each other, raised their spears together, and spoke in time. The chief has spoken. So Jack's gone completely over, the power edge. Yes. We have about 10 minutes of class left. Okay. Oh, we have 20 minutes of class left. Can you wait?
No, I have to go pee. I already drank like 3
Go. Then the three of them turned and trotted away. Presently, Ralph rose to his feet, looking at the place where the savages had vanished. Sam and Eric came, talking in an odd whisper. I thought it was, and I was scared. Piggy stood above them on the platform, still holding the conch. That was Jack and Maurice and Robert, said Ralph. Aren't they having fun? Thought I was going to have asthma. Sucks to your asthma. When I saw Jack, I was sure he'd go for the conch. Can't think why. The group of boys looked at the white shell with affectionate respect. Piggy placed it in Ralph's hand, and the little ones, seeing the familiar symbol, started to come back. Not here. He turned toward the platform, feeling the need for ritual. First went Ralph, the white conch cradled, then Piggy, very grave, then the twins, then the little ones, and the others. Sit down, all of you. They raided us for fire. They're having fun, but Ralph was puzzled by the shudder that flickered in his brain. There was something he wanted to say, then the shudder had come down. But they were regarding him gravely, not yet troubled by any doubts about his sufficiency. Ralph pushed the idiot hair out of his eyes and looked at Piggy. But the fire. Of course, the fire. He started to laugh, then stopped and became fluent instead. The fire is the most important thing. Without the fire, we can't be rescued. I'd like to put on war paint and be a savage, but we must keep the fire burning. The fire is the most important thing on the island because he paused again and the silence became full of doubt and wonder. Piggy whispered urgently, rescue. Oh, yes. Without the fire, we can't be rescued, so we must stay by the fire and make smoke. When he stopped, no one said anything. After the many brilliant speeches that had been made on this very spot, Ralph's remarks seemed lame, even to the little ones. At last, Bill held out his hands for the conch. Now we can't have the fire up there because we can't have the fire up there. We need more people to keep it going. Let's go to this feast and tell them the fire's hard on the rest of us. And the hunting and all that, being savages, I mean. It must be jolly good fun. Sam and Eric took the conch. That must be fun, like Bill says. And as he's invited us to a feast, meat, crackling, I could do with some meat. Ralph held up his hand. Why shouldn't we get our own meat? Twins looked at each other. Bill answered, we don't want to go in the jungle. Ralph grimaced. He, goes. He's a hunter. They're all hunters. That's different. No one spoke for a moment, then Piggy muttered to the sand, meat. The little one sat solemnly thinking of meat and dribbling. Overhead, the cannon boomed again, and the dry palm fronds clattered in a sudden gust of hot wind. You are a silly little boy, said the Lord of the Flies. So now we're with Simon again. And the pig head is talking to him. Yes.
So do they not realize there's different ways to call for help, you could say, instead of just fire?
Probably. What else do you think they could do?
They could take something reflective, Say if they see a ship, they
right, but I don't know that they have anything reflective except for Piggy's glasses.
Then there's no metal on the beach at all.
No. Well, I don't know about the plane, what's left of the plane, but no, they're not thinking about that. That's a good idea, except the problem is the one ship that they've seen was so far out away from them that it would not have seen the reflection of the metal of trying to signal them. Now, if there was something closer, yes, they could have. But a ship could see, they're right about the smoke. at a vast distance, they could see that smoke, but the signal, the metal, they'd have to be watching for a ship. They'd have to, I think that would be more difficult, but if something was closer, that would work. Okay. But for the distances and to keep something, a constant signal up, the smoke is the best option. Okay. I mean, I thought about why didn't they make like an SOS in rocks on the sand, but I'm not sure that would show up either. I don't know. You know, so they're looking for things to see. That would only work on planes to see them overhead. And that would have to be during the daylight. But yeah, so I'm not sure. They don't really talk about other things like that. But you're right, a metal piece of metal, something reflective. Pretty sure they don't have any kind of mirror, but they might have had some metal on the plane. But then I don't know that they would have had any way to like tear it loose. So you got to remember it's the 40s. I don't know how thick that metal was that was on the plane. Yeah, I don't know. So, okay, well, let's get this done. So the Lord of the Flies says to Simon, "You are a silly little boy," said the Lord of the Flies, "just an ignorant, silly little boy." Simon moved his swollen tongue but said nothing. "Don't you agree?" said the Lord of the Flies. "Aren't you just a silly little boy?" Simon answered him in the same silent voice. "Well then," said the Lord of the Flies, "you'd better run off and play with the others. They think you're batty. You don't want Ralph to think you're batty, do you? You like Ralph a lot, don't you? And Piggy and Jack?" Simon's head was tilted slightly up. His eyes could not break away, and the Lord of the Flies hung in space before him. "What are you doing out here all alone? Aren't you afraid of me?" Simon shook. "There isn't anyone to help you, only me, and I'm the beast." Simon's mouth labored, brought forth audible words. "Pig's head on a stick. Fancy thinking the beast was something you could hunt and kill," said the head. For a moment or two, the forest and all the other dimly appreciated places echoed with the parody of laughter. "You knew, didn't you? I'm part of you? Close, close, close. I'm the reason why it's no go, why things are what they are." The laughter shivered again. So what's Simon know? That there isn't really a beast. They are the beast. And Simon's trying to say that. He's tried to say it before. It's inside of them. Okay, just like Jack, it's come out in Jack early that, you know, the savagery and the beast of that, you know, that we could be, the human beings could be, the savages that we could be. Simon understands that. He's a little guy, but he understands all of that better than the others do.
So Simon's like the realistic one, like the one that actually looks.
Yes, he looks deeper. Yeah. Piggy's intelligent and knows about logical things. Ralph is somewhere in there, but Simon is more the philosopher, the understanding of human.
So with Piggy in his glasses, he's kind of symbolized as like the nerd.
A little bit, yeah. Yeah, you could look at it that way. Yep. Yep, if we're looking for symbolism, yeah. Piggy would be your early typical nerd. Because this was written quite a while ago. All right. Come now, said the Lord of the Flies. Get back to the others and we'll forget the whole thing. Simon's head wobbled. His eyes were half closed as though he was imitating the obscene thing on the stick. He knew that one of his times was coming on. The Lord of the Flies was expanding like a balloon. One of his times was coming on. So Simon may have seizures. That's kind of implying that he has some kind of fits or seizures. This is ridiculous. You know perfectly well you'll only meet me down there, so don't try to escape. Simon's body was arched and stiff. The Lord of the Flies spoke in the voice of a schoolmaster. This has gone quite far enough. My poor, misguided child, do you think you know better than I do? There was a pause. I'm warning you. I'm going to get angry. Do you see? You're not wanted. Understand? We are going to have fun on this island. Understand? We're going to have fun on this island, so don't try it on, my poor, misguided boy, or else. Simon found he was looking into a vast mouth. There was a blackness within, a blackness that spread. Or else, said the Lord of the Flies, we shall do you. See, Jack and Roger and Maurice and Robert and Bill and Piggy and Ralph. Do you see? Simon was inside the mouth. He fell down and lost consciousness. Okay. And that is the end of chapter 8. That was a weird chapter, wasn't it? Okay. So Simon, I don't know if Simon has some kind of epileptic seizures, or Simon is prone to blackouts or something like this, but that seems to be what they were implying, or he's been having trouble like that since they got on the island. But he has some issues here, and he's now hallucinating and thinking that the pig head is talking to him. Okay.
He just might be dehydrated.
A part of it, yes, it could be, because they did say his tongue was swollen, he was thirsty and getting thirstier. So he's hallucinating. Yeah, he is. He's hallucinating. Don't know how often Simon hallucinates, but there's something there with Simon. Simon understands things a lot better. He understands human nature better than a lot of the others do. Okay. Let's look at the exercise that I would like you to work on. Go ahead and open this. It says LOTF themes and symbols.
What time do we get out of here?
11:50.
Oh,
Yeah. Okay. Themes and symbols. So these cover chapters 1 through 4. Okay. So we're going to look back at them. We are going to do so. You do have some questions to answer over chapter 8, and I probably will give you, I may have a quiz for you tomorrow over chapter 8, probably. Okay. There are some important things in there. Okay. So themes, the savagery or evil of human nature. All right. Being civilized and acting morally is not part of human nature. It is more natural for humans to act like savages or animals and be cruel to others. Did you ever think about that? The natural order is for us to be more like animals, to be cruel. So what you'll need to do is find a couple of examples of it. What does it say? It just says, okay, find 2 examples for each. All right. If you can find plenty of these. Find 2 examples of our savagery or human nature in the book. Okay. Loss of innocence. When the characters arrive on the island, they appear to be innocent children. Without civilization and order, the boys experience a loss of innocence. So find 2 examples in here of the loss of innocence to put in here in those chapters. And you know what? It says chapters 1 through 4, but you could go beyond that if you want to, because we've covered the first 8. If you want to go use something from one of the later chapters, you can. That's fine. Power and the abuse of power. Power causes strife and competition between the characters. Power has the potential to corrupt or improve the characters. So find 2 examples of power and the abuse of power. And then fear as control. Fear is a driving force in Lord of the Flies. Some of the characters instill fear unto the group in order to gain power and control. Who would that be? Jack.
Jack, yeah.
Yes.
I was thinking Jake for some reason.
No, Jack, you were close. Fear influences the characters' attitudes and behaviors. Many times it causes the characters to act irrationally. So find 2 examples for me in the book of the fear being used as control. Then symbols. The conch. Okay. So the conch is one of the symbols. Find an example or quote. Okay. And the significance of the conch. So in this case, find some examples of how even in chapter 8 here, there was an example of how the conch was their symbol of they felt comforted by it. Okay. So find that. Piggy's glasses. What do Piggy's glasses not just the fact that it makes Piggy, you know, it represents intelligence, but what do they use the glasses for? To start the fire. So Piggy's glasses are almost a symbol of rescue and survival. Yeah, they're a tool that they have to use. And the fire, that's a symbol of them being rescued. Okay. The beast. Fear. Yeah. Okay. So find an example and quote of each and explain what's significant about it. And again, you don't have to stick to the first 4 chapters. You can use some of the other chapters too. All right. Any questions about that? Okay. So, all right, guys. So that is it for today. I'm going to stop the recording if I can. Come on.